Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos. I'm the founder and CEO of Product School. And today I'm here with a special guest. Her name is Ingrid Bernaudin, Director of Product at Uber. And we are going to talk all things product, diversity, and whatever our guest wants. So let's kick it off. Hi, Ingrid. How are you doing?
Hi, Carlos. I'm doing great. It's great to be with you today. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on the show. I've been following you for a long time, all your content stuff that you put on LinkedIn, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's get right into it. Why don't you tell us a little more about how you got started in product?
Sure. All right. So a little bit about me, as you've guessed, first with the name and then with the accent. I'm French, so born and raised in France, in Bordeaux, exactly. And I started with a master's degree in computer science. And so the first 10 years of my career, I was in engineering. So went, engineering development, architect, and then engineering manager. I worked in innovation and first time to market product. I'm going to age myself. I worked on predictive analysis before anybody knew what it was and before it was cool. So I had a big foot on in data and business intelligence. And done that for 10 years. I moved then to Japan to work with our very demanding Japanese customers. And it kind of burst my engineering bubble. I was like, what are people doing with our product? Why would they do this? Why are they using it that way? And it all of a sudden made me think about the product in general. Like, where are we going with it? What's the vision? What's the strategy? Why are we doing this feature versus that feature? And so that's how I became interested in the product. And then I moved to Vancouver after Japan. And there I created a team of engineers for business subjects. And I really still had this idea of working on the product. And that's when I started in product management. So I started in very technical product with some cloud products that were integrating with on-premise product in a time when it wasn't that easy. And then I moved to more mobile product and love the mobile experience, love creating mobile application. And that's when I really engaged with product management. And then did B2B, B2C. I went to Shutterfly for B2C, created a lot of work around photos. Loved it, see how we can engage people through their photos, and how we can auto-generate products, so using a lot of AI and ML. So that was super exciting. And then after that, after 3 years at Shutterfly, I moved to Uber because I got really excited about the driver team. And I keep on saying to my friends and family and network that you can bitch on the sideline and not be happy about what Uber is doing. And, it's a very controversial company. Or you can go in and try to change things and do the best for our drivers. So that's where I am with the driver team at Uber, working on, providing income for millions of people around the world, and really, really interesting problems to solve.
That's a very good way to put it, because obviously when we think about a huge company like Uber, they have a big mission statement, but then within that company, there are so many different product initiatives. And as a product lead, you get to pick something that you can be very passionate about that might be different from what maybe another product leader is working on. So in your case, what are some of those big challenges that you are passionate about solving?
Yeah, there are a bunch of them. So the first one, so I was in driver growth. So how do we bring drivers into our platform? How do we retain them? How do we get them back when they're churning? And so one of the big things for me was there is very few women drivers around the world for very different reasons. Some is safety concerns, some is social, and the different politics that are in place in different countries. And so one of the things that I was trying to do was really, how can we bring in more women? Because one of the things that we've seen is that, especially when we're trying to, when we are doing some roundtable with women driver, we realize that driving is a great work for women that needs a lot of flexibility, especially single moms or women that needs to take care of other elder people, so that have very strict schedules, or they usually care for their community. So they need a lot of flexibility. They cannot do the 9 to 5, but they also need their independence. And it always goes through having some money, right? And so you need the financial independence before you can have the social independence. And so that's something that we're working a lot on, that we're looking at is how is our product? How is our product in terms of diversity? Is it good for women? Is it not good for women? What are the things that we can do to improve it? And then of course it's all about drivers and how can we make it easy for them to come to the platform. Uber has a crazy funnel. I think everybody is thinking about funnel. It's like, oh yeah, those are the 3 steps that you need to do to sign on and to sign up. You need to do your name and put, to information, your email, password, and you're done. At Uber, our funnel has like over 7,000 iteration. It spans around the world with all the different types of rules and regulation that you have. It goes from asking you for 2 documents and takes about 5 minutes to France is a great example of a complex one where you can ask about 57 documents and it can take a year and a half and it costs, several thousand euros. So those are all the great things about in product is how do you make it work? How do you make it work so that it's flexible, but also it's working well and the team doesn't have to think about all those crazy flexibility and it's working with only one framework. And then you add to this, it's not just drivers, we're also working with the couriers and we're working with the freight drivers and the restaurants. And so you imagine the kind of system that we're working on and it's awesome.
I hear you. As a product person, I love that challenge to make it simple because from the outside, it doesn't look like that, right? Like I just put my phone number and I'm suddenly in. I have a family member who was asking me this question, like he doesn't work in tech. He said, so what do you do? Why do you need that many people, right? It's a website and that's it.
Exactly. It's just a button, right? You just press a button and then you have a car that is coming.
So on that note, I noticed that you are also chair of Women in Product at Uber. So I want to know, what does that mean?
So that's one of the reasons actually I also came to Uber. So the funny story was after Shutterfly, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was like, okay, I'm going to be very thoughtful about my next steps. And I have the list of all the things that I wanted. So I wanted to have a company, a smaller company than Shutterfly. I wanted to be the head of product of that company. I wanted this company to have amazing female leader, at least one. And I wanted this company to work on a mission that was aligned with my values and what I really care about. And then, ta-da! I arrive at Uber and you're like, what's wrong with you? And it's really what was inspiring was the mission for the driver, as we talked about earlier, and the change that you can bring to the world by having such a position in such a company. And then the other thing was the woman in product management. Uber had, very strong history of problematics with women in tech. And when I did my interviews and I discussed with my leadership, they were very aware of it and very willing to make changes. And so that's something that I took at heart and I said yes for the role because I knew that I would be able to make some very, big changes at Uber in terms of women in product. And so what we've been working on is first, how can we increase the number of women in product at Uber? Because I fundamentally believe that if you have a diverse team, and it's not just women in product, it's like all the minorities and all the different backgrounds and the diversity of thinking that you can have in a product team. If you have a diverse team that is creating product, you're going to have a much better product. And so that's one of the big things that we did last year. We moved our women in product from 7% in driver, so yeah, it was pretty bad, to over 30%. And then we're looking at ways to increase the visibility of women at Uber. We're looking at also how we're doing recruiting, how we're doing promotions, how we're doing any kind of HR related things.
And it's amazing to see the progress that you and your team has been making. And I want to be part of the solution and I want to encourage other people to do so. So as a man, how do you think that we can make can you make ourselves like allies and also contribute to increase the diversity numbers?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And it's especially important when you have such a difference in numbers. So obviously the solution cannot be just with the woman, it has to be through the allies. And a lot of times when we talk to men, they don't really know what they can do, like you were saying. And so there are a few things that you can do that are very easy to do that will avoid a lot of the gender bias that are happening on a constant basis. So one of the big thing, for example, is calling it out. So if you're in a meeting and you see someone that has a tendency to interrupt when a woman is talking, or when woman gave a solution or an idea and then it's repeated by a male counterpart a few minutes later, call it out. Say, hey, great, I love your passion, but can we please let Ingrid finish? Or, that's a great idea. And I think Ingrid, said it like, just before. So how can we make this happen? So being able to call out when these things are happening is a great thing to do. I think another thing that is super important is to mentor women in your surroundings. So you always have women around you. Mentoring is a great way to increase the woman visibility, but bigger than mentoring, sponsoring is what women need, right? So for me, the difference with mentor and sponsor, for the one who don't know, is that mentor is going to be there to answer some of your question and will basically educate you and grow you and coach you. But the sponsoring will be, you will be there for this person. You will go for this person, and you will make sure that when there is interesting projects, she will be there, that if she can have more visibility, you will, provide this possibility, etc. So I think, if you're a male in the room, think about it. Like, are you sponsoring any woman in your company? Are you mentoring any woman in your company? And how can you do this to increase this visibility? And then I would just say one more, which is very funny because people don't really realize, is to share the non-promotable workload and opportunities. And this one is super important, is that you're going to notice, once I'm going to tell you, you're going to notice it. It's not as often through Zoom now that we're in COVID and shelter in place and all this. But when you're in the room, a lot of the time, the woman is doing the non-promotable work, which is she's going to take the notes. She's going to go and grab the coffee. She's going to go and organize the birthday party. She's going to go and organize the next happy hour. She's going to do like all those things that are the social work, which is great, but it takes a lot of work. And that means that you're not doing the work that you're going to need to be promoting.
Thank you for sharing all of this. I think it's really important. Food for thought. I also want to take you to your days in Japan and in Europe. I'm sure you've seen so many different myths and misconceptions, right, based on your own experience. So can you talk a little bit more about some of that?
Sure. It's been an amazing journey so far. As you were saying, so I lived in 3 different continents around the world and seen very different culture. And it's always interesting to see the culture of all the different countries. It's for me, it's a blessing when you to actually live in different countries because they are every time you realize that that's how much you're seeing when you're living in an environment, and every environment that you live into is going to give you a bit more of an understanding. And I think one of the big misconceptions, for example, in Japan, is that Japan is a very sexist country and you cannot succeed as a woman, for example. My experience, and then it's my personal experience, is that actually what they value overall is how good you are at your work. And for me, it was very interesting because I've had this happen as the only woman in the room around the world. I started as I was saying, in engineering, went to Germany, arrived in a team meeting of all the architects, and they are all old white male. And I arrived, in the room, all happy. And then the entire room stopped talking, look at me and said, what is she doing here? And then I arrive and I go near the where the coffee was, and all of a sudden it was like, oh really, oh she must be the admin, taking care of the coffee. And then I continue and I go in front of the room, and they're like, no, that doesn't sound right. And then I'm like, well, I'm here to present on this architecture topic today. And they were like, who is she, right? And there was no, like, it was super hard for me at that moment to be able to get the buy-in from this crowd. And it took a very long time. Whereas in Japan, on the other hand, it was very hard when I started because obviously I was a gaijin. I joke that I look like Shrek in Japan. I'm just too tall, too big, wrong color. They were very more non-committal. So very, they arrive in a room and they just listen very carefully, but you're not sure if you're making an impact. And then one day what happened is that I solved like this giant issue in one of our major customers that was in production. And it saved like a huge deal for the Japan team. And all of a sudden I became Ingrid Sama. And so for those that, have an idea of Japan, Sama is a purpose and past position of the name that show respect. And since that day, it was work, no problem, no difference between the fact that I was male or female. So I think it's, all countries have different ways of approaching, having women in the room and having different view on product. Like Japan was very funny of the way they were it was very important. Everything was pixel perfect. Like at that point I was working in business intelligence, and all our report had to be the exact same size and the same margin and everything perfect. And it was super important for them. And then in Europe, it was completely different. What they wanted was to be able to scale and be able to have new functionality and be able to do new things. And so there were like very different demands around the world for the same product, which is always fascinating.
Yes, and I'm smiling because I'm from Spain, living in San Francisco, so I can totally relate to the cultural differences working in different parts of the world. I visited Japan. I haven't worked it, but I think you can bring some of those learnings to the products that you are building. You have that additional level of sensitivity to really relate to different groups of people and make sure that your product is inclusive from scratch, instead of just trying to add a patch at the end just because we need to translate the website to a new language, right?
Totally. And that's always interesting, like when you start a product, and that's something that I've done over and over and become better at, is think about all the different types of group of user that you're going to have to serve, even the minorities, because they're always going to bring you something interesting. And you're going to see it in a different way. Something that seems really like a great idea is all of a sudden a bad idea. So like, for example, at Uber, we were creating this product and it was to get someone to help driver onboard in countries that are very low tech savvy. And we're like, oh, we need to have when this happens, the person that is going to onboard, we need to have a friendly handshake between the driver and the onboarder. And so we had this nice screen that was popping up on the driver app that was saying, hey, so Ingrid, and with a photo and the name, is going to take care of your onboarding. And here is our phone number if you want to have any questions or comments, etc. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. It's like a very friendly handshake. And then we went for a roundtable, and we said, well, I want to make sure that we have woman driver in the roundtable. And the woman driver saw the screen and totally freaked out. And they're like, no, you cannot do that. You cannot show my photo and my phone number, and they're going to be harassment, happening all over. So please do not do it that way. Keep my personal information personal and not share it. So it's always interesting to see the different groups of people will focus on different things. And so being able to get this information at the beginning is always helping you to build a better product in the end, in a very coherent way, without having to, as you were saying, just translate at the end of the product life cycle.
So obviously, in addition to your curiosity and your experience just traveling the world, what would you say are other hard and soft skills that help you grow your product career?
Yeah. That's a really good question too. There are a lot of them. I think the hard skills is really understanding how a product is built, and it's. I think from my perspective, I was lucky to be in the engineering branch before, so I have very good understanding of our tech systems, and when we need to have architecture discussion, I can be there. So it's always helpful. I would say, even if you're not coming from, there is a big debate, should product management come from tech or not? I have to say, in my team, I have people coming from everywhere, and I think it's super important to have this diversity. But if you don't come from tech, try to understand it at least, so that you can understand, the product that is coming. And it goes for each of the different areas that you're touching. Understand design, understand product, like tech, understand marketing especially if you're working in growth. Understand ops if you're working in a company that is ops and their processes. If you're in B2B, understand sales, right? Because at the end of the day, if you want to have a good product, it's not just what you're shipping. And that's something that I keep on telling my team, is that you're not getting brownie points for shipping features, right? Your job is not to ship. Your job is to make a business impact. And in order to make a business impact, you need to understand how all the teams are working, so that you can really understand things that are going to be successful or not, things that are going to be sellable, things that are going to be marketable, etc. So that's for the hard part, the hard skills. I think the soft skills for me, that was super hard, especially when you're trying, you're becoming senior PM. So when you're growing as a PM, you first learn how to execute, and you're super happy because you can execute and it's all good. And then you start to do A/B testing, and you know how to do, your learning loops, and it's becoming better and better. And then you become this giant expert into your area, and everybody's asking you all the questions on earth. And you're the go-to person for this product, and it's awesome. And then all of a sudden you say, well, now I want to go to leadership. And what I see is that one of the soft skills that it was very difficult for me to get, and that now is a must-have, is your storytelling, or how you communicate to leadership. And it's very hard for product manager, because as they're an expert, they know all the ins and outs, they know all the detail, they know so much. And every time they're talking about things, they want it to make very perfect, and they talk about all this. And then what the problem is that nobody understands what they're saying. Especially at the leadership level, they have 5 minutes to understand what you want and why you want it and what's the benefit of it. So you need to learn how to communicate to a different level. And that's very difficult, especially for the kick-ass product manager that knows everything, right? So having this learning, these soft skills of how do you communicate differently to different people in the industry or in your company is going to be essential if you want to grow.
I agree with you 1,000%. I come from an engineering background myself, so I had to struggle with that. I think I didn't have a single class or a presentation during my 4-year degree. And these days, that's all I do, communicate with people. So I think it's extremely underrated. And unfortunately, it's only being taught at the end when you need to be in front of people. So I also advocate for having more training and more experience, just putting yourself in front of people over email, webcam, whatever it is. But the best way to learn is by doing it. There are not enough TED Talks or books that you can read about how to speak if you don't speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the big thing for me that I learned is, they always tell you, ask you the why. And it's like, don't just ask you the why, ask you 5 times why. It's like, oh, we need to redo our upload for our photos. Why? Well, so that user can upload faster. Why? And it's like, you need to ask it like 5 or 6 times until you're like, well, because the more photos we have, the more we can create products, and we can do things, and we can engage people, etc. Right? So I think that's this succession of things, because you start always so lower level. And so having this always thinking, why is it important for my audience? Why would they care? Why would they care? I don't, it's not what I want to say, it's what you want to say. And that brings me to the other thing that is a soft skill that I've learned the hard way, I would say, is I'm very vocal, transparent. I always talk my mind. And one of the things that I learned that was a great coaching moment was, don't say what you want to say what you need to say. And this one is a very, very good one to always think about, especially when you're getting triggered or when you're getting very passionate. think about it. It's like, do I really need to say it, or do I just want to say it really badly? So that's a good one too.
Yes, and we train a lot of PMs, and I've seen this pattern many times. So amazing engineers who have a lot of raw talent to become PMs, who in some ways are better than what they think they are, or because they just can't get their point across. And I've also seen on the other side of the spectrum, incredible people that might come from other backgrounds, such as consulting, that they have just more experience interacting with customers, that they feel just more comfortable presenting, although sometimes they also need to work on like what you're actually going to deliver. So I think the magic sauce is somewhere in the middle. You need to master both.
Totally. I would fully agree with this. And that's also why it's so important to have a diverse team, because, product management, you have so many skills and you cannot be great at all of them, right? And you need the diversity of those skills. And so if you have people in your team that have all those different skills, then they can work together to grow, each other, right? And like to your point, your example, you're going to have someone that is really good at the content and the execution and know how to do things. And then someone that is really good at if they work together, they're going to do awesome, right? They're going to kick ass.
And I'm glad that now we are having more conversations around career paths for product leaders, because at least in engineering, the way they taught me was, well, you're going to start coding. And then if you code well, you'll become a senior coder and then maybe a principal coder. But, I raised my hand. Well, what if I just don't want to code? Well, bad luck. You just sign up for this, so stick to it. And I think in product, it's can be a little bit of the same. Like I've seen a lot of product people who really enjoy being in the weeds, working directly with engineers and designers, and they just want to continue doing that and making a bigger impact. And that's totally fine. And sometimes they get pushed towards the leadership or people management side, where they are forced to start managing people while they want to be individual contributors and be rewarded for that the right way. So how do you think about those type of career paths for product leaders?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting because the way I see it, I think there is a difference though between engineering and product management. For me, the biggest difference is that for product managers, actually you are a manager even if you're not managing anybody directly. Like you need to have the skill sets to be able to manage teams, because you rely on so many teams to do what you want them to be doing and to be this leader to be able to get where you want to be, right? You're basically by de facto managing the engineering team and the design team and other teams if your company uses other types of individuals. So I think from a product manager, the people management part should come more easily than on engineering. And engineering is like completely different skill sets, right? But that said, I think that's one of the things that we're seeing is that even though you have the skill set, that might not be what you want to do, as you were saying. It might not be what you're interested in doing. You don't want to do the performance review every 6 months. You don't want to spend time talking to people, especially people that needs to, be up-leveled and, so all those difficult conversation, you might not like it. And so that's something that we're working, for example, at Uber. This year, we increased the pass of single contributors just for this, because I think there is a very good way for people that are becoming really experts in a domain and provide a lot of value to product to still be in a single contributor pass. And so that it doesn't mean that you need to become manager to really grow as a leader in the company. So I'm super happy to see that happening in many companies. We see it happening in all the big companies, and the small companies are going that route as well. So I think it's great for product management and for all the product managers that don't want to go through the engineering path, through the management path.
Yeah, and there is a trend that I think is contributing to allowing product managers to manage and focus on the things that add more value, which is that the tools in general are becoming more visual, more friendly for non-technical people. I remember, you also come from a strong technical background, right? Like you wanted to use data, you better understand SQL and whatever. Now we see that PMs can be a little more self-sufficient. So how do you think about all of this, especially coming from such a strong technical background?
I actually, I'm a super strong advocate for engagement data tools. I love Mixpanel and Amplitude. I think it's two tools that are really changing the way that product manager can do their job. From my perspective, a product manager really needs to understand what's happening in the product, right? So you have different phases when you're starting your product. You need to innovate. You need to think outside the box. Of course, you don't have, a lot of data to back you up because things don't exist, right? So you have to go through with your guts. But once you have a product in the wild, you shouldn't go with your guts for understanding what's happening. Like if you see that you have a drop, you shouldn't have to say, oh, I think that's because that and that. Well, no, you have tools for this. You have, max panel and amplitude for this, and you should be using it day in and day out. You should understand exactly what your user are doing. And I think, it's great to be able to, even me, like I can go and write all the SQL that I want and then do crazy shit with Excel, despite my BI background. But it's not getting me where I want. It doesn't have the flexibility to get the information in the fast pace that I need. I don't have 2 hours to spend. I want it in 10 minutes. And I want to slice and dice. I want to understand, what are different segments of the population. Is iOS doing the same thing as Android? Is the people in the US are doing the same thing as in Europe? And you just keep on slicing and dicing until you get what you want. And so those tools, I think those visual tools are amazing to be able to understand what a product is doing and to be able to give the information that the product manager needs to make a kick-ass product.
Well, Ingrid, it's been a pleasure to share this time with you. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, it's been great to be talking to you. I hope that the people, here enjoyed it. I sure did enjoy it. And so thank you for everything. And please keep up doing what you're doing. Product School is awesome. I love what you're doing and the webinars and the different fireside chat. It's great to see it because product is a bit, not the golden child usually. So please keep up the great work.
We're fighting for it. Thank you so much for being part of the community. Bye, Ingrid.
Bye.